Hey everyone, so I noticed that a lot of you guys are new, so welcome to the channel. I'm having a Q&A, so if you put down any comment, any at all, I will read it in my next video, so do that and, just try to get to know me. The new podcast is coming out. It's a fiction podcast. It's called Cape Lock. It comes out on July 3rd, and it's 5 episodes long, so make sure to go check that out on Spotify. The links will be in the description. I also have some other ones if you don't have Spotify. It's totally free to listen to, so go check that out and ask me questions either about the story or just to get to know me. I'm pretty interesting. Get into the video. We're gonna watch the video now. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but behind me in almost all of my videos, I have books because I love reading. I'm big brain. I've always had an affinity towards literature, and there's a history behind that. So as much as I love making fun of movies and books, I've also wanted to take a minute and talk about the books that actually affected me as a person and made me who I am. Hopefully you've actually read these books, and if you haven't heard of a few of these titles, you can just have a read and check them out for yourself. Trust me, they are very easy to read because a lot of them are from early on, so nothing too large that'll take you days to finish. Also, it's just another video to feed my nostalgia because I've been locked in for months now and I haven't done anything but think. So let's just get into it. So the first books that I've ever actually read were the world record books. You know the one. It had the big green or purple spiral, the one with an eyeball just there for some reason. Every day at lunch, I would be the first one in the library, hoping to see that spiral on the bookshelf. But then I'm disappointed when I see Jared reading that book with all the popular girls around him. And you know the natural law of the Guinness Book of World Records. You get all that puss. Besides, I never actually read the books, but I've always looked at the pictures. This one book in particular that is burrowed itself deep into my memories was one with that one guy who split his tongue in two and got a bunch of tattoos to make him look like a snake or a lizard or something. Even as a kid, I was like, that's metal as fuck, bro. While Jared was getting all that puss, I was left to read another book that was also in wide demand. That was the I Spy books. I think you remember these amazing photographs by Walter Wick, who actually organized these. These were taken on a camera, guys, and all these little thingies floating around were set up in that particular and exact way. So I don't know, he deserves a Nobel Prize or something. Much like the Guinness Book of World Records, I mainly only read these for the pictures. However, I still appreciate the poems written by Jean and Dan Marzullo. I think that one book in particular that I loved from this series was Spooky Night, mainly because of the psycho-inspired house, the creepy skeleton guy. I don't know, spooky shit rocks. My introduction to children's horror, yes, that's a real genre, was the work of R.L. Stine and his Goosebumps series. I've also watched the show, but that's just another video altogether. I think that what I appreciated most about them were not only the great art on the covers, but the strange and scary scenarios that the book made you think about. But it didn't necessarily work the right way for me. Instead of being scared of Slappy the living dummy, I actually wanted a Slappy replica ventriloquist dummy. But I thought that it would be impossible, when now I could just go online and buy one. Oh, how times have changed. As a kid, I thought that it was impossible to find anything that I had any interest in, until I realized that it was probably just my parents not wanting to buy me stuff that I probably wouldn't use ever again after that moment. But if I had a Slappy dummy, I would be using it to this day. Till this day! I even have a shirt from Dumb Good with Slappy on it. That's how much I love this shit. Also, I think it's needless to say what my favorite book of the series was. Still, another one of my favorites was I just really loved stories about time dilation and affecting time. This still gives me chills sometimes. Either ways, I think that this series heightened my love for horror more than making me scared. I think this is also a good time to mention that I have a podcast where I analyze horror, and I made an episode about scary stories to tell in the dark, so go check it out if you want to know more about the books and why I liked them. But I'll give you the SparkNotes version right now. As much as everyone was excited to pick up the Guinness Book of World Records books, there were also many people who were terrified of picking up those books from the covers alone. I remember coming home feeling the clown skull looking at me through my backpack and reading the book with a flashlight late into the night and not being able to sleep just because of Stephen Gamble and Alvin Schwartz's artwork and their stories, respectively. I think this was more of a deep dive into a serious genre of horror that really shaped how I consumed media as a kid. And I don't really got many jokes to say. That's what happens when books are actually good. So let's talk about the next one. E.L. Konigsberg wrote one of the first chapter books that I read. It was interesting. It was basically about these two kids that run away from home to live in the Metropolitan Museum, while also uncovering a conspiracy within its walls. Alright, stay with me. It definitely got me interested in mysteries and history, but I think you can tell which one actually stuck with me. Here's a hint. If it weren't for the name of the war, I could never guess when the War of 1812 was. Still, it was the first book that I read with floor plans and maps of the setting, so it was helpful to visualize what we were reading. Now, I also mentioned this in my video before, and apparently, Geronimo Stilton is an Italian book? I just never knew it. Elisabetta Dami wrote this series about Geronimo Stilton, a rat boy who likes reading and solving mysteries. So pretty much just me. It was action-packed, and a lot of the words helped visualize the story, like how cheese was made out of cheese, like... That's galaxy brain. There were cults, crimes, and conspiracies, and I was all up in that shit, baby! Now comes a very special segment of the video that I want to dedicate to one author in particular, Kate DiCamillo. Here are a few books that she's written, and I'm pretty sure they might seem familiar to you guys. The Tale of Despero is a story about a small mouse who has big ears and was born with his eyes wide open. He's banished to a dungeon with nothing but a red thread and a sewing needle for a sword. It's a nice story of being who you are and being brave in a lot of the instances in which you feel so small. Growing up, I think the thing that really stood out to me was the book itself. The pages on the outside had little fringes and stuff, so it looked like mice were actually eating it, because a big part of the story were mice eating books, but Despero read books instead. But I mean, like, the fact that the books themselves referenced the book, it was so meta, it was so fucking cool. But growing up skinny and scrawny and just very small in general, I resonated a lot with Despero's character. And I think a lot of kids might have. We were just kids. The Tiger Rising also follows the story of Rob Horton, who is dealing with the death of his mother at the age of 12. He finds a tiger locked up in the woods in a cage and helps set him free with a future classmate of his. It's a nice story about not letting your emotions bottle up and instead letting them roam free, and usually with help. That lesson in and of itself is just really important. As a side note, Mr. Rogers, a lot of his episodes really talked about dealing with your emotions, and I think that it's just such an important lesson to any child. Now, because of Winn-Dixie, a little light switch probably flipped on for a lot of you guys. This is one that I think is really influential to a larger majority of people. I mean, the whole story is literally about a kid going around town with a dog that she found in a grocery store. And as she goes around the town, she just finds a lot of complex people with difficult problems, such as a death in the family, alcoholism, and even being in jail. But I think that the book sheds a very positive light on them and shows that these are just people with problems. And the one that personally affected me the most, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. This is the book that got me into reading. It's about a China rabbit named Edward Tulane, and he's loved unconditionally by a girl named Abilene. One day in the Queen Mary, he's thrown overboard, and that sets into motion this huge story about a fisherman, a hobo, dancing in the streets of Memphis, and of course, at the end, finding out what love is. Not only love, but also loss and self-doubt. I think that a lot of kids aren't taught that, and this book definitely did not flinch away from those subjects. And remember, I was a kid when I read this, but I never actually knew anyone personally who has read this book, until I met Roberto. He also has a YouTube channel, Just Another Voice Actor. I asked him what his thoughts were on this, so here he is.
Hello, I'm Roberto Martinez, or Just Some Voice Actor. You may know me from literally nowhere because I am not famous, and if you do know me, I need a restraining order. You've probably heard the plot from Johnny, so I'm gonna tell you how I felt. Like, it was an amazing ending to the book. Huh? Oh crap, so no spoilers? Got it. Sorry, I liked it. No, it's more than like, but just a tiny bit below love. It is my favorite book. I read it in 3rd grade a long time ago, and I still remember key events from the story. The ending. I can't tell you it, but I cried. I cried in the middle of class reading this, and then for the next 2 years, I was pee-pee pants Roberto. Not for crying, but something else. Anyway, yeah, I would love to get amnesia if I could experience reading Edward Tulane for the first time again. In fact, Johnny, hey, knock me in the head. Just, no, hey, hey! So apparently it's illegal to hit a child that isn't yours, even if they ask for it. It's a good book. I highly recommend you read it, and get tissues for your eyes, and get to reading, because you will never find a book with the same feeling as The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and And if Kate DiCamillo is watching, thank you.
After rereading the book recently, I think the parts that stuck with me the most were the lessons of love and loss and how it affects people. As much as it also shows how Edward learns to fall in love, it also shows that he gets hurt when they leave him, and it doesn't go away. The book tackled depression in a way that me as a kid could understand, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I try to control my emotions and work on my emotions and how they affect my life. Even as an adult, this lesson still goes on. It's a process of learning and figuring out who you are. Not only that, learning about other people and how their emotions work. And a life like Edward must be influential in some way or another. Like I said, growing up in a time where I felt alone and scared and small in such a big world, not only just because of my body and the size of my body and just my sexuality in general. These books didn't just take me to a different world. They actually helped me figure out who I am. I learned more about my emotions than I ever would have if I never even picked up one of these books. Mr. Rogers has been quoted as saying, "I believe that all feelings are mentionable and also manageable." And at the end of the day, I wouldn't have been here if it weren't for reading.
Et c'est ce que j'entends.